Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of COVE Tenant Talks. I'm your host, Kyle Burton, the Tenant Engagement Manager here at the Center for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship. We do this every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Atlantic Halifax time, and we interview a COVE tenant, a member of the community, each week, learn a little bit more about their company, some of the products and services that they offer, and give some general insight into the activity that they're doing here at COVE and across the world. So we're very excited to be joined today by our guest, Dave Roddis. He's the president of Roddis Communications. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks very much, Kyle. It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining me. And I see you're joined from your office at COVE, where we're experiencing a little bit of a tropical storm at the moment, or just the front end of it.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think they've turned the heat down in an effort to balance out any tropicalness of the storm. So I apologize for wearing my coat to try to stay cozy up here on the chilly third floor.
Fantastic. So yeah, thanks for joining. Very excited to learn more about Roddis Communications. But first, let's kind of jump in and share some details about your experience, your personal experience leading up to the start of the company.
Well, everybody who knows me knows how much I love talking about myself, but my background ties into, I guess, my relationship with COVE. I was involved with a local R&D manufacturing design company called Orion Electronics that was located in Windsor. It was a family business. Ended up being quite successful. Was acquired by a large multinational named COVE back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. I served as in sales for a number of years there, and then kind of worked my way through to director of marketing. And after I decided to leave that, had a brief foray into the newspaper world, which was an interesting experience to say the least, and spent some time with a law enforcement supply company, kind of soft goods, so uniforms, ammunition, belts, buckles, etc. They were acquired, went through that acquisition, and by a company called Pacific Safety Products, and not long after that started Roddis Communications. So the ocean tech community here in Nova Scotia, I think a lot of the engineers, technical people, sales, and management, after COVE kind of moved away a little bit, a lot of those people branched out and started companies of their own, very successful companies in their own right. So many of the people that are involved in the oceans tech industry are people that I would have known over a number of years. So throughout Roddis Communications kind of history, I suppose we've worked with many of those companies that now serve as the backbone, really, of the oceans tech, or at least part of that backbone.
A great observation. That has led to a lot of really good companies and strategies coming out of that. So you're exactly right. Also, I noticed some of your possibly hockey buddies are joining today, commenting on how nice your office is. So I think they're right. Great decor there, Dave.
Well, listen, I will apologize for anyone in advance who might see those comments, because certainly that would not be what anyone would have expected, but certainly their support, however misplaced, is appreciated.
Speaking of that, can you give us a little bit of background on Roddis Communications and some of the services and skills that you guys bring to the table?
Yeah, I think the genesis of Roddis Communications really came out of, in complete transparency, I found myself looking around for a job and was looking for someone to hire me and pay me what I was worth. And it turns out nobody thought I was worth what I did. And so started doing consulting, really doing what I did at Orion, which was, helping companies manage their marketing. As a director of marketing, I would handle, website developments and graphic design and, marketing strategy. Who are we talking to? Why are we talking to them? What are we doing? So really the initial clients that we worked with was really that, coming in and helping clients in that role. And if I didn't have the skills to do it myself, then we would go find local suppliers, whether it was graphic designers or web developers or mail outs. It's been almost 12 years now. So certainly digital marketing was nowhere near what it is today, but at every opportunity, it was really more about how do we take a strategy designed to build sales and apply marketing principles to help those companies achieve those things. So we would still fall into that same breakdown of really kind of, web strategy, creative, and then print. As time goes on, more digital and video work, but essentially whatever we think the right strategy is for the client, we'll either try to do it in-house, or if we can't, we'll try to find them a good partner and help act as what we would like to think of as a knowledgeable partner to help make sure that, we do things with a reasonable budget and help track the successes of any activities.
So super fascinating. And I remember you did a presentation maybe 2 years ago highlighting the importance of how closely interlinked sales and marketing are together, how they're kind of one and the same in most cases.
Yeah, well, you're going to ruin my presentation because I think I stole some of those elements from that Ocean Connector. But, working at Orion was a really interesting spot because essentially we didn't want necessarily traditional fanfare or publicity because what we were doing was essentially surveillance equipment for law enforcement and government agencies. So that's not something you want everybody to know what you're doing. And so we really focused on marketing, became as much about good product design and talking a lot to customers and trying to figure out, what we thought the market needed and where the market was going, trying to find connections between the technology expertise that we had and their needs. And so, I think for me, marketing has always been an effort to try to help support the sales funnel. So if you can have, and I'll admit other people may disagree here, I'm not someone who believes in brandings for branding's sake. Marketing money is really easy to spend. So I'd like to normally see that we try to direct it in a way that's actually going to generate sales for the business. And, ultimately, if you do that well enough, then you can have more money to spend on more grandiose marketing. But in general, that's my philosophy, is we're really trying to drive sales as much as possible. Not always as successful as we would like, but that's certainly where we start from on every project.
Super fascinating. Let's jump into your presentation that you just mentioned and learn a bit more.
All right. Well, I'll do my best. Hopefully, it's not too boring for everyone. But
sweet. All set?
I think we're good.
Perfect.
All right. I will start. Yeah. So Kyle maybe hamstrung me a little bit, ruined the first couple of slides. Thanks, Kyle. But so Roddis Communications has been around roughly 12 years, and we do the majority of our work with, what we like to define as entrepreneurial organizations. So it's not necessarily organizations that are run by entrepreneurs, but, there are government agencies and public sector organizations that are really entrepreneurial, and they approach things in that light. So we've highlighted some of the clients that we work with here at COVE and who are also involved in the ocean tech sector. We do a lot of work with export-oriented organizations. Again, that's my background to an extent. So that's always been a good fit. So that combination of people who are building products, who are exporting, and who have that entrepreneurial approach have always been a good fit. A lot of these clients are technical in nature. I've always loved working with engineers, which puts me in some small segment of the population, I suppose. But I've always enjoyed that relationship between trying to figure out how do we leverage technology to solve problems and come up with innovative products. So we often say that we're very good at asking questions. That's kind of what we do. And we try to take your answers and then turn those into good strategies. And we break down into traditional agency type activities, though I'm not a huge fan of that word agency. I'm not sure why, but 50% probably of what we do is related to web. So either web design or kind of leveraging websites to make the most out of digital campaigns. We do a lot of creative design and branding, everything from brochures, business cards, logos, presentations, etc., data sheets, some strategy as well. We like to think that that's kind of baked into everything that we do. I'm fairly nosy, so most times I'm going to be asking, why are you doing certain things when we're talking to clients? What's the end goal of what you're trying to accomplish? And may sometimes we'll have clients come to us and say, we want to do this. With a bit of a conversation, we might actually offer some different alternative approaches to say, listen, if that's what you're trying to do, perhaps this might be a better way to do it or a more cost-effective way, and really try to have a very collaborative approach with clients. And kind of take their expertise, which is their clients in their market, and leverage that with our expertise, which would be kind of the different marketing tools that we have in the toolbox to try to achieve those goals. And we do a fair amount of print brokerage, and that nowadays, it used to be fairly standard, but now can run the gauntlet. Everything from spec sheets and standard print things to envelopes, business cards, trade show booth designs, which I think we'll probably don't see a big growth in trade show booths over the next 6 to 12 months, but execution of those kinds of things. Again, as digital and video becomes a greater part of what we're doing, especially over the last 6 months, we certainly do a lot of that as well. So in talking to Kyle, starting this out, really the conversation was, what other than just talking about myself for 45 minutes, which didn't sound enticing, could we talk about? And Kyle suggested that one of the things would be, what differences have we seen in customers over the last 6 to 8 months with the reality of COVID. As mentioned, we have a lot of export-oriented clients. So the quarantine travel restrictions has had a massive impact on them. And I think talking to people in general here at COVE and in the oceans tech sector, you really are seeing that for many people, large show, oceanology or oceans, or any of the, trips to specific organizations or doing trade shows or sales trips along the West Coast or overseas in Europe have really been curtailed. So, there's still have that need to generate all the opportunities. The questions we're getting is, so what do I do now? I don't have trade shows. For us, we're asking, well, if there are no trade shows, what's the business like? Do you still have budget available that perhaps you're not spending on trade shows that we could spend elsewhere? Do you have a plan for how you're going to tackle this hole in your marketing mix? And then, trying to help them determine what is going to be effective. Trade shows are great and sales visits are great. You really come away with something tangible most times, a business card or an introduction or a relationship. So in the absence of those things, how do companies adjust? So that's certainly been those kinds of questions we've received a lot and tried to come up with some good answers. So some of this, again, going back to a few years ago with the Ocean Connector, the ocean tech sector is an interesting one because depending on who you're talking to, they have very different customers. Some are dealing primarily with government and may or may not see any change or slowdown, at least in the short term, in terms of budget allocation for programs. Others may be dealing direct to consumer, in which case, the financial impacts of COVID have been significant. A scientific community, again, probably a bit of a mixed bag, and corporate entities. But each one of those markets is going to have, depending on the products that you're selling, are going to have different needs and probably different ways of reaching them, especially for those people where you would expect to see everyone at a large trade show once a year, and that opportunity is no longer there. What do you do to tackle that? So to me, I think in times like this, it really forces you to look back and make sure that everything is set up properly. And for a lot of our customers, interestingly, when we spoke to them at the start of this, we were asking questions: how are things? How are things going? What are you experiencing? What are your customers telling you? We were quite fortunate to have clients who, for the most part, were saying, we see this as an opportunity. Certainly, there's some uncertainty, but it's a real opportunity for us to look at what we have been doing and trying to create a plan so that, as things go forward, we're ready to take advantage of any openings in the market or any, new opportunities that are going on. And certainly there have been a number of government programs that are I think have been quite helpful in trying to get people refocused on developing products using their core expertise. So again, in times of uncertainty, having a really solid understanding of, what products you have or services, and understanding, where they fit, what problems they solve, who you are actively trying to go after, and making sure that these are, real products, solving real problems, as opposed to just, an interesting byproduct. I think the interesting thing about product development is that a mistake in product development can really be costly, where you waste significant time and energy trying to develop a product that perhaps looks like it might be attractive because it's kind of the convergence of a bunch of tools or IP that you have, but really is a solution searching for a problem. So for the customers, I think that we've seen do very well. They have a very good handle on what they're selling and to who, and what those advantages are. So with the lack of trade shows, that solid core understanding of what you're selling and who you're selling it to becomes even more important as you kind of leave that trade show where you get to do your 30-second elevator pitch and chat to people. You've got your booth, you go out onto the internet and start leveraging these digital tools, which has seemed to be a common landing spot for most people who can't travel, is re-examining what their website looks like, taking a look at how they're doing on their, search engine optimization or their digital advertising. We try to preach as much as possible of we all have experience, ourselves included, of setting things up and taking that set it and forget it approach, where you set up a digital campaign or build your website and then don't touch it again for 2 years as you go off and do other things. But the more that we do here, the more I see how critical it is to really understand what is effective. In some ways, it's a paralysis by analysis. Google Analytics and the various tools that are out there will give you more data than you can possibly know what to do with. But again, if you've got a very deep understanding of who you're trying to target, making sure that you understand, whether campaigns are effective or not, running A/B ads or A/B versions of different ads or campaigns with different keywords and different messaging to see which ones resonate are important. Making sure that you understand, where you rank within keywords, but not even just the most standard keywords for your industry, mooring beacons or, analysis software or wave height sensor or those kinds of things, acoustic monitoring, those standard things, but really understanding the clients that you're looking for. What are they searching? Mooring beacons is an interesting one only because it's something that is used in Oceans Tech, certainly for any kind of long-term installation, but it's also used by the pleasure yachting industry to figure out where you park your beautiful yacht. So if you're not careful, you can spend a lot of money going after a keyword that on the surface looks great, but in reality isn't actually pulling qualified leads through. So making sure that you have a good understanding of what you're trying to do, be as targeted as possible, and tracking the results so that you can identify if you're spending money in the wrong spots or perhaps in areas that aren't as effective or as efficient as you might like. And this is a huge one. I think for many people now, it may well be old hat, but we talk a lot about traffic, and traffic is great. And certainly if you're doing nothing, then increasing traffic to the site can be good. But we've got a client, not in Oceans Tech, that happened to write a blog post about how to, what is a back extension for exercise. And this one page is responsible for a tremendous amount of traffic on their site, not necessarily relevant to what they're actually selling. And so if you just looked at traffic, you'd think this is great, but we're trying to now convert the visitors to that page to try to see if we can glean people who may well be good audiences and who may well actually be looking for the products that they're selling. So while traffic is great, it's really about trying to take the next step then and determine how can we convert these visitors into actual leads. Are we getting real leads or is it just traffic? And unless you're selling advertising for Google, you're probably not interested in pure traffic. So, this is an area where I think once you get past that first step of actually running digital campaigns and working on your search engine optimization or SEO, it's really about how do we then convert people and understand who is coming here and how do we turn them into something that's actionable, something that turns, or at least has the potential to turn into a sale, to turn into a conversation similar to what I would have on a trade room floor. So that really, I think, is the key. That success is sales leads, not just visitors to the site.
If I can jump in, Dave, do you think that trend will continue when trade shows and physical travel returns to normal?
I think so. I mean, listen, this is my own personal opinion and based on nothing other than talking to other people and reading various things that pop up on my Firefox home screen. But someone said to me that they felt like that the economy has been waiting for a fundamental shift based on the rise of the internet and what that means, and that COVID may well just be that kind of fundamental restructuring of how things work. If you look at the largest companies in the world now, whether it's Amazon or any of these, Alibaba or whatever they are, they're primarily digital companies that are serving products and services online. And I think that's the reality for many of us, is trying to learn how to deal with that. Personally, I know before I buy anything, chances are I've gone and researched it online. I know what it is. I know the features that I want, and at times know more than the salespeople I end up talking to, because while they are trying to understand, a product line of 800, I'm super focused on one product, and I've seen 15 YouTube reviews, and I've looked on forums to talk to people about their experiences and specs. So I think for people, especially with very specific and technical products, I think having a really good presence online is going to be critical. Even more so if there's travel. That I think many people, I'm getting towards the point where I guess I'm not an elder statesman, but certainly older than the meme probably. And I spend a ton of time researching things, and I can only imagine that younger generations are doing the same thing. And certainly that's our research. So if you're not there and you're not findable, those initial, it's always good to be first. So talking to people first is important. So I don't think it's going anywhere. And one of the advantages, I suppose, we talk to people a lot, to talk to this return on investment. A challenge that many people have about trade shows is you get to a position for certain companies where you go to the same trade show every year. Why? Because we always go. And if we don't go, then it's going to look weird. And people are going to ask questions why we're not there. And in my opinion, one of the advantages that kind of digital marketing does is it allows you to really quantify what the return on investment is. All of the stats are there. And I love salespeople. It's still a big part of what I do. But sometimes it can get tough answers about the value of a trade show. No, it's great. I saw everyone. But it can sometimes be tough for management to determine whether that cost is a great cost. Digital, at least, really provides details. You can track people now with the various tools right from initial contact all the way through till they either drop off or they buy something. And there's learning to be done at every step of those. So I think with a good plan, some people may actually appreciate some of the metrics that come along with an enhanced digital component to their marketing plan. Ultimately, I think you always, unless you're very transactional, you've got an e-commerce site and you're just driving traffic and they're processing orders, there's always a conversation with people. And I look at marketing for most people as how do we try to generate those conversations? How can we, get people comfortable enough that we belong in this space and that we have the answer to the problem, that they either pick up the phone or send an email that starts that conversation.
Interesting insight there for sure.
So, one of the things with COVE that I love the most is that, we do have a really good mix. We've got some really well-established, world-leading companies here who are really on the cutting edge and who are known and have international reputations for doing great work over a number of years. But we also have a number of companies that are starting out, or, they've got innovative products, or and are just getting involved, or they're established companies that are making connections here at COVE and getting new ideas and coming out with new products in sectors or targeting markets that they perhaps haven't before. And so for me, I love that idea. It's super exciting, and I always tend to think it's really key to try to stay focused. We run into that ourselves. I hate saying no. The joke in the office is David's favorite project is the next project. It's really exciting dealing with entrepreneurial clients. It's infectious. You can get really excited about what they're doing, but, trying to make sure that we stay to what we do very well and understand which projects are going to pay off in the long run. And while something can be really exciting technically, and really deliver a lot of value to the people of the company, it may not have a great market. So especially for those startups or small businesses or launching new products, is really having a good idea of where the best probability of success is and focusing in on those, and maybe using non-traditional techniques, mail or, personal phone calls, or, very targeted emails or advertisements that are really focused in on pains to try to get those conversations started. And again, for startups and small business, more so probably than everyone who may not have, months and months of runway to get things started, is really focusing on how can we get sales, which not only help the bottom line, but normally result in good feedback from customers, talking about what they do like, what they don't, elements that small tweaks to the products might actually pay big dividends on those initial, on future sales. So, not shunning small 1 and 2 sales, because normally the experience of kind of building the production experience, selling and execution then pays dividends when you meet the really big opportunities. You're well prepared for it. So, in closing, essentially, for me, sales and marketing really is a process. This is a bit pat, I'm sure, and probably in every marketing and sales presentation ever. But if you can get the rigor and the commitment to not only execute campaigns, but to go back and look and see how they did and make small changes and make incremental improvements over time. We've had customers come up to us and say, we're looking for that one campaign that's really going to put us on the map and blow things out of the water for us. In my experience, it just doesn't happen. The spin cycle for most industries is really short. So you can have a great campaign, but 2 weeks, someone else comes up with a great one and you're gone. If you hedge all your bets on one brilliant campaign or one massive print ad in a trade magazine, you blow your entire budget. It may well result in great results for you. But in my experience, taking a more measured approach that's just consistently going after the targets that make the most sense pays dividends in the long run. It's a more organic growth, but that's certainly my philosophy and where I start from anyway. So, that's essentially it, Kyle. Hopefully that was of some use anyway, or at least educates people a little bit on our philosophy and how we tend to try to approach the campaigns and the work that we do with our clients.
That's great. Thanks, Dave. That was a great presentation, and I think people learned a lot about the process and some of the thinking that they can use to combat what's going on right now, not being able to reach customers. One thing I will note, just of personal interest, and maybe you can share some insight, is why, for the most part, ocean tech companies don't do e-commerce. You can't order from the website. Is because the products are mostly customized, or can you share some insight into maybe why that might be happening?
I don't know. Listen, we've had different answers. It's a tough one. I think for most people there is a trepidation, and we'd be the same way, right? I mean, we have a price range for things that we do. I mean, we have a pretty good idea of where things will land, even if they are customizable. but I think there's a reluctance possibly to have certain products for sale. Are we going to be perceived to be expensive? Are we going to be perceived to be cheap? Is there an advantage? We often hear, well, I don't want to tell them the price because I'd like them to call me so that I can tell them the price and then I'm talking to them. And I'm really torn. So I guess it would depend on what your products are like. I mean, if you've got a price advantage and you know that you've got a price advantage, then I would suggest that e-commerce is probably good. If you feel very comfortable that your pricing is in line or that you can justify it or communicate in some way on a website why your price demands what it is, I would say those are most often the complaints that we get. And that's really a personal preference, I think. We've certainly gone back and forth. Some of our pricing is published and some of it isn't. But I think there's an argument to be made. And we certainly have some customers who have e-commerce sites. And the advantage of it is that at that stage, if you can do a good job of an e-commerce site, then traffic does become important, because you can start looking and saying, if we can convert 20% of visitors, well, if we can increase visitors by 100,000, that's 20,000 new conversions, right? So at that stage, it becomes a good argument to do it. And, depending on pricing, if your pricing is below a certain level, you're dealing with government. A lot of government agencies issue credit cards that allow them to purchase up to $5,000 without a PO. So, or that's the way it used to be anyway. I'm not sure, it's probably different by industry, but if you're in those kinds of situations, having an ability to leverage that is good, I think. So.
Interesting. And I wonder if that there might be a trend in the future where a younger buyer is becoming more active in the market, where we kind of expect pricing and more details to be online, if that will trend in a different direction.
I think it will. I mean, we certainly hear about it from different people. We've got some clients who are involved in real estate, and if you talk to them, they talk a lot about how young buyers today are really comfortable doing almost entire transactions digitally. They're not necessarily wanting to sit down with you face to face or meet for a coffee. You're much more likely to receive a text message from them, or engaging with them digitally in some way, and they are comfortable buying houses through text message, essentially. And I think for those of us who perhaps didn't grow up that way, it's a little strange. But I know myself personally, I'm really comfortable having conversations with people on text or email, engaging and having conversations with communities, whether it's on YouTube or forums, having conversations with people there and buying products without ever having seen it, but having done my research online and seeing it. So I think you're right. I think there's going to be more of that. And as travel becomes restricted, that may just well be the reality, that you're not going to have the old, tinker pulling up in their horse and carriage, unloading in the village square and showing you all the wares. You're going to have to go out and find it and probably feel much more comfortable that, it is what you're looking for.
Well, that's great. We're way over time, but I think we've shared some. No, it's great. I think that's a better problem to have than the opposite. But we had covered a lot of ground, and I think people got some really good insight from you, Dave. So I really appreciate your time. And people can reach out to you. I seen on your last slide, it looks like David at Roddis.ca.
Yes, and well, I mean, you've said there's a bunch of tough comments from hockey players, so we'll see what comes through the email. But thank you very much for the opportunity, Kyle. Certainly, we've been a big proponent of COVE from the beginning. I think it's great, not just for our company to be in amongst some really world leading companies, but for the community as a whole in the Atlantic region. I think it's critical that we, export is the key for us. We don't have enough population to support businesses here necessarily by ourselves. So the more export we can do, the better. So thank you very much. And I appreciate it.
And thanks again, Dave. And I hope you are well prepared for the storm that's hitting us just right now.
But I'm ready for Teddy.
Perfect. Don't hop off yet, because I just want to share a few more details. We do this every week. So we have Dave this week. Next week, we do this again at 1 o'clock Atlantic time in Halifax. So you can register online, coveocean.com/events. And we'll do this every Tuesday. So Dave, again, thank you very much, and good luck. And I really appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks very much.
Take care.
Bye.